Hello, Peter.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Sorry, what's that?
Happy New Year.
Yeah, good point. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So, just checking some messages here. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that email where they referred to the BBC. That was quite interesting. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Okay, one second. Do you want your coffee? Okay, fair enough. I thought you were using the name printer. You don't have to take it now. It's just that it's getting it.
Hey, Peter, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, Frode, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, we hear you.
Right. Sorry. Mark, where are you? So
Mark,
today we're supposed to work on, first of all, the community thing. Let me just find the spreadsheets and hope Alan will join us. How is everyone and now in the new year?
I'm doing great. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it was quite busy for holidays. I'm still editing a 3-hour video of the presentations we had. So it's quite long, but we have the first version on YouTube already. I'll share with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hang on, I'm just going to deal with the practical thing here. I have to get Edgar his baby tuna. Just 1 second.
Baby tuna.
Where is Brandel? I need Brandel today. I got my Oculus, you see. It arrived today.
I see you guys entered a virtual reality phase.
Well, you say it's a phase. I don't think it is a phase. And, you know, you talked about costs and things. Don't forget. Sorry, my hair got messed up by that. That's really important. Don't forget that, kind of strangely, people who don't have that much money, they're the ones who tend to buy the biggest TVs. That's because they like entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's an effective way to get entertainment, right?
Yeah.
So I think it'll be something similar with VR, that a lot of people will jump in. And I see now there's a bit of a tipping point, but still the issue we've been discussing, will there be proper productivity stuff? That's open for discussion.
I just want to clear up that I'm a complete fan of VR. I love it. It's incredible. And I mean, it's something that we've been doing since the dawn of text, if you think about it, right? Because storytelling is virtual reality in a way, where you're listening to somebody telling a story and you go into another dimension, another world. So it's just another interface for seeing things.
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting for Brandel and Alan, you know, to dive into the community planning thing. I'm glad you agree, but the thing that surprised me is a couple of things. Number one is this thing about you have 3D on a computer screen. That's one thing, but if you can move your head, you know, and if you can move that, and it becomes something really strangely different. Anyway, I'll report back. And when you guys get your Oculuses, I'll meet you in that land. But anyway, okay, while we're waiting for the rest of the guys, let's have a look at this.
I think the other useful thing that came up, just to bring Raphael up to speed, was we're discussing the fact that you know, having something like the Oculus was less about a 3D experience, but more potentially a sort of n-dimensional experience, in that it's a bit naive just to think of it, oh, you know, that this is the next revolution of sort of blocky 1980s wireframe diagrams. but more that for the sort of things we're talking about, it's the ability to say, take some information and look at it on a whole number of different axes. And now you've got the affordances of these things to work with. I mean, that I find much more interesting than just being able to play a game with the headset on, which is, I think, where a lot of people's head is at the moment. And that's absolutely fine, but I don't think that's the interesting part of it at all.
I love the idea of VR glasses as entering a mind palace, where I keep my things. So it's a literal entryway to a mind palace. So it's very nice.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is a very nice way of looking at it. By the way, there's some things with this setup that's really amazing and some that are really awful. Like I'm trying to log into YouTube, Google, same thing in a way. And I have the headset on, I have to do a code here and I can go to another part of the app. It's just, obviously it's something you'd only do once, but it's pretty bad. Right, so on the agenda, I met with Ward Cunningham yesterday. Everybody knows him, he's the inventor of the wiki, right? Wonderful chat. I showed him, this was not really to do with my PhD because my thesis has officially been handed in, even though they don't have the documents. So it was not recorded. But he really likes the idea of visual meta. He really thinks it's cool that we accept that documents still exist because he doesn't in his work, but intellectually he likes that. But more interestingly, the map in Author, you click on something, you see the lines he really likes because it isn't messy. So that was actually his main thing. And he would very much like to join us for a hosted session. So what I think we should do, considering the potential group of people we have, we should do every 2 weeks. Because if we only plan until June, 6 months, that's actually quite a lot of time. And then we can, during that, get enough people for the next year, because otherwise 1 year will be filled up really quickly. What do you think, guys?
So until June, that would be 8 people. We can get 8 people for 6 months. That's completely fine, I think. So I think it's more of a matter of logistics and getting people's agenda. So basically, if we take January and we fill all the slots until June, we're fine.
Yeah, so Barbara will join us January 21st. So I think we should put Ward, I don't know. But anyway, these have said yes. Also, Richard Saul Werman, who founded TED. Barbara's already up there already. We can just delete her because she's moved across. And then we have these other high suggestions. So like Anne Laure, I'm going to invite her soon. I think we all agree on her, right?
Yeah, I think she's been doing a great amount of work towards text productivity and knowledge management area. I think it's good.
Oh, so that's where that.
I would love to get Alberto Mangel on board. This book has been incredible, and it's 100% about text. And he's very, very thorough. And he worked with Jorge Luis Borges from the Infinite Library.
That's amazing.
So he's a living person that had contact with some amazing people. And he would be a very valuable asset. I'll try to find some contact information for him.
Special effect for Brandel.
The Oculus.
It's arrived.
Excellent.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, Raphael, if you get him, that would be amazing. I obviously have his book and read it too, so that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandel, you have to send me a friend request or whatever it's called.
Oh, on Oculus, yes, I will definitely do that. I'll sync you up.
Cool. So now we just need everyone else to feel excluded, so they'll also join us. We'll do the psychological thing of pretending we're better than them. It's not working. It's not working, is it? No. All right.
Nope, not working.
So, Brandel, I was just saying, I spoke with Ward Cunningham yesterday. I had a really lovely chat. and he would like to join us for one of the hosted things.
Mhm.
We also have Richard Saul-Werman, who founded TED. So I think we just agreed as a group that we're going to try to do a hosted meeting every 2 weeks, because that means June, 12 people. It's not that bad. We could easily do that. But then we need to decide on, in this meeting, what our journal will be, what medium and so on. Will it be blog, PDF, or whatever? We just have to put a stick in the ground and just make a decision, and can always change it, but we've got to do something.
Well, PDF really strikes me as an output format. In other words, it's best used for something that has broadly become static, or has reached an addition, a point at which you want to crystallize it. And in that way, it sort of reflects a boundary between the old-fashioned thing was quite literally you had to put it on a piece of paper to show somebody, as opposed to the brave new world we're moving on, where arguably it never has to exist in a documentary form, which I guess is where Ward is coming from. As long as one's always connected in, and that's the assumption we're sort of making.
Well, I think he thinks that PDFs are important in the context of how we're doing it. But the thing is, let's talk about it from an almost child perspective. What is a journal? A journal is a published work, therefore exported, therefore frozen. But that should not preclude a very interactive experience with a journal entry or the whole corpus of journals, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of different components to a hypertext in that there's cross-linkage and there's web delivery. And the web delivery aspect of the hypertext is the aspect that is problematic or challenging for sort of durability. It would be possible to have a local archive or to be able to save a zip of a set of pages and give that to people. In terms of the way that they would be able to then interact with each other, it might be somewhat odds if you wanted to give people something. You can host it as well, but also to just make sure that it's always downloadable, and that sort of serves a number of purposes simultaneously. I don't know whether Solid, I mean, I haven't spoken to Sir Tim before, but and I don't exactly understand how Solid is supposed to be helpful, to be honest. But it might be a mechanism that is worth considering, or if only spiritually as well. So if anybody's familiar with what it is that Solid is supposed to do for the concept of durability and hosting, I'd be very interested.
One of our colleagues, Mark and I, his name is Henry Story. He did Solid, and along with Chris Gutteridge, who is probably the most clever person I've ever met, with all due respect to everyone here, we don't get it either. We really like the basic ideas, but it seems when you get to what it actually is, there's a lot of air to it. By the way, just to show you, in Author, you can export to WordPress. Currently, it doesn't work very well because some APIs changed, but it wouldn't be that hard for me to change that to work. But let's, because I'm enough an artistic personality trait, to put it that way. Let's say that one thing we would like is to have this be relatively easily interactable in VR space. What just for that aspect, because we can obviously output publish to many different formats. So Brandel, what would you like it to be if you were going to be interacting with it in your software?
This is where I clash a little bit with the rest of the web VR community, but I think that it should be in HTML in order to make sure that it works well in virtual reality. The one caveat is that in order for me to be able to do my work of rendering something to HTML, it's necessary just to have it in the right sort of tag structure that means that I can extract what needs to be seen and where. So beyond having some mind and expectation that it's well structured enough to do that and to think about the scale and the size of the pieces within it, I don't believe that it's worth trying to optimize for anything more than that. So, most people in WebVR at this point aren't using aren't using documents, they're using 3D models. I think text should be text. I think it should be represented as such so that it has the sort of transposability and changeability. And to that end, I have built things that support being able to render a document, or being able to take a snapshot of a document at a moment and turn that into text. That's what's in Word Reality. That's what's in Deep Reader. So yeah, text.
I'm just trying to see if I can log into my WordPress server here. And I'm having problems, so I'm not going to waste anybody's time on that.
Very
Yeah,
quickly, before we skip ahead too fast, just to pick up the point about Solid, something I've heard said, and it wasn't said in any way sort of disparagingly, but in a way, Solid is sort of is trying to take another crack at the semantic web that never quite happened. There wasn't, when people write about the semantic web, I think they genuinely thought it was going to happen, and clearly it has. So this is another attempt, and it probably comes more from an engineering community that sort of is rather exasperated that the world doesn't understand, XML, and just does things like RDF, is not natural to most people, and I think that upsets them. But we are what we are. So Solid is an attempt, well-meant attempt to provide referencing means, but I think the sort of where it comes from was picking up the ashes of what semantic web never quite came to be, if that helps.
I mean, it does, but I'm still perplexed as to what people's expectation of the impact it would have on a user or community level, because ultimately technologies must have that or they aren't anything. And so when people say things like blockchain is going to revolutionize Kickstarter and yet you won't feel a thing, then you can't have both things. Either something is going to change or it's not going to revolutionize everything. So
indeed, it's another version of but all my friends use product X. Exasperation. Yes, yeah. I mean, I think it's well intentioned. I think a lot of good work's gone into it. Am I sort of thinking it's going to go anywhere fast? Likely not, because I think what it makes no attempt to do is to wrap the human into the thing. If we were going to hand everything off to our robot overlords, Solid probably would be a good part of the jigsaw, but I don't think we're there yet.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Okay.
Innovation will only happen if it's needed.
Okay. Well, thank you for the detour. I'm somewhat relieved and disheartened to hear that the Future of Text community also doesn't know what Solid does for us.
I would absolutely love to understand and support Solid. I mean, Tim Berners-Lee, not only Mr. Famous Man, but he is one of the wisest people I've come across, and I would love to have him active in our community. I've only had a chance to talk to him a few times, and I was so impressed, but this just doesn't grok, to use that Americanism.
Well, it's not a case. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I think it's this classic case, but maybe just not doing anything right at the same time. So it's well thought. I don't think there's anything apart from people who are going to go really down in the technical weeds. No, and I really do think it's Semantic Web 2.0, but Semantic Web 1.0 didn't go anywhere. And the question that perhaps they aren't asking themselves, they're asking the wrong questions, is why did the first thing fail? And well, let's not go down that rabbit hole because it's not our problem.
And the thing with these, with all of the projects that are decentralized, where you have your own little server in your machine and you own all your information and everything like that, is that it has to be set up in the moment you're setting up the computer. So it has to be out of the box. If it's not out of the box, I don't see it happening anytime.
So guys, a key question. And, I just texted Adam because he hasn't been here for a while to make sure he's okay. And that is, I don't want to give anybody work. That's not what we do here. But let's say, for the sake of argument, Brandel, you had decided that you desperately wanted the journal to go into your world. You've already said you would prefer to have it as HTML. Can you tell us a little bit more? Because if it's cheap and easy for me to modify and export from Author, considering we already have to WordPress, then maybe we could do something that we could easily export to all kinds of different useful things simultaneously.
Yeah. So having the simplest markup, one of the reasons why Wikipedia is such an appealing thing for me is that it, one, it's a very large corpus. Two, it's pretty good information. But three, the representation is incredibly simple. So there's very little that you need to know about what the CSS is doing. I mean, it's good that CSS is there. You have level 1 headings, level 2, stuff like that. But more importantly, it's very simple and very consistent, or somewhat consistent across the articles, so that you know that a paragraph is representative of approximately this amount of text and stuff like that. Whereas, for better or worse, on a lot of commercial websites, that those kinds of guarantees aren't necessarily the case. Apple.com does a pretty good job, but it, like fighting to make sure that textual representation is somewhat consistent with the way that the most basic reader would want to be able to render a page is a constant uphill battle with anything that's a little bit more opinionated with regard to representation. So yeah, I think within the context of that, I would also aim for and argue for simply a simpler representation, because not just with VR, but with other technologies in the future, the vision of HTML as a document format that is less opinionated about presentation than the specific browser that's responsible for doing it, I think it was a really useful thing. And as computing changes to become party to representing things in a more diverse array of ways, we will probably need to lean back on that and remind people that HTML is a format for information, and browsers are a machine for deciding what to do with it.
I agree.
Right.
For the Me platform as well, basic text would be better for structuring it in different ways, and even modularizing it if we need.
This is nicely consistent with the idea of having, close level addressability. And in fact, if you think of leaving aside the exact letters HTML, if you have this structured approach, effectively built in, if you treat that as a necessary constraint, I suppose that's one way to look at it. It frees you up from other stuff. Now, if I'm working, say, an author, I don't need to see that. But if author knows that at some point it knows that the ground truth underneath whatever you're typing, the structure that, the headings you zoom in and out of are in fact the headings belonging to this structure, which, at the moment we're calling HTML. I think that's the way I see it fitting together. Because in that sense, in some aspects, author or reader will be functioning as the browser. I know that might seem a bit odd, but effective it is, because you're saying, oh, here's some text. Yep, I know what this is. This is how I present this sort of text. And I read something that looks like a document, doesn't look like a web page. I'm happy. That's what I expected to see. I don't actually really care the structures that as the end user. I don't care. Those of us who care about the interrelation and the permanence of that text do want to care about that structure, because that's half the thing that helps us cross-reference it and keep it alive.
Right. So a question is, I'm asking Raphael, Peter, and Mark first. How do you want to consume the journal? How do you want to, quote unquote, read it? In what way?
That would be up to the readers, but I would assume for me personally, I would go tablet based. I think reading on a tablet is incredible.
Hang on, Raphael, just to really explain the question. I also mean, should we transcribe it, so it's properly done with a human, with your friend Danilo, who's been very good. Should we just use the YouTube transcription? Should we leave it as video? Or so what is the kind of medium that you guys personally, when you go back in a few months, you want to look back? What would you like to use?
So for example, a lot of people love podcasts, but I cannot listen to the podcast for the life of me, because it doesn't engage me in a way that video engages me. So if it's a recorded podcast where people are talking and there's camera 1 and 2 jumping back and forth, that's perfect. I love to watch people having conversations. So audio format for me is it's no good. I tend not to consume audio content, spoken audio content, right? Don't only music. But I personally, I would go either I would go video and text, considering we're going to have these recorded. So
Okay. So do you think that if we can afford it, considering it costs about $50 each, if we do a human, do you think we should do that? Or do you think we should use a kind of a scraping mechanism to get the raw YouTube, which doesn't say who's talking? For your own personal consumption, Raphael.
So for my own personal consumption, I would love to see, since if we do it twice a month, that's fortnightly, right? And if we have fortnightly publications, connecting that with the newsletter, and having it in both, receiving it in email, but having I like to print out stuff, right? So if it's easy to print out a little booklet with the transcription, that would be nice. But that's me personally. I would do that, even if I would do that myself, right? But yeah, a fortnightly publication in text would be amazing with the video conversation of the meetings.
What about you, Peter? How would you like to consume because the journal will at least in large part be our Zoom meetings. How would you like to consume the result?
Well, to my mind, I'd like the typeset text on a tablet, but backed up by machine readable text.
Okay, Mark?
I think, I was thinking, to a certain extent, it's actually really quite, toss the wrong word. It's sort of context dependent. If I'm wanting to listen to part of the journal where there's a lot of cross-referencing, I don't, for instance, want to be listening to a conversation. I want to be looking at some kind of a hypertextual, regardless of what the sort of browser type is, but something where I can, in the moment, follow all those links. Otherwise, it's interesting what Raphael, just typing something in, but I find that I very often, I find that getting traction in podcasts is difficult. What I tend to do is I do tend to listen to videos. So I'm probably not watching the video most of the time. I flick back occasionally if there's something being shown. I normally listen at between 1.5 to 2 times speed because there's too much fill otherwise, and my mind tends to wander off onto something else. So I'll listen fast, and if necessary, I'll backtrack if there's something interesting I didn't understand, or if it's signposted, we've now got to the bit that I made a note before that I really need to listen to, I might slow it down. But again, in fairness, I'm talking there about normally me listening to someone in my native language. Another native English speaker. I'm very conscious. But then again, if it allows some people to listen to it more slowly because that aids comprehension, I think that's a good thing. Again, if I was reading the journal, maybe not in my first language, I'm probably as important would be having some translation facilities at hand, whether provided by our sort of journal, as it were, or something else. And that's why I say it's sort of really quite contextual. If it's English this week, but it's all Japanese next week, I'm going to want to interact with it in a different way because I'll know from the get-go that I got a steeper comprehension task involved. I'm not sure if that's helped, but that is an answer to the question.
Yeah, I think it has actually. Brenda, how would you like to consume it?
I'm in the audio video camp. If it's primarily to do with the transcript or the video, then I think that is a source of truth. I definitely do a lot of listening to videos and then accompanied by a written and indexed précis of where the primary things are and an overall sort of summary of what it is that got covered in that time would be useful so that you can kind of glance and say, well, if I need to go back to that conversation and kind of refamiliarize myself with it, then I can do that. So that would be really useful as a representation. It's similar to the Worldwide Developers Conference videos, although it doesn't have that sort of pricey component. It's got a clickable transcript. So that would be really nice. The extent to which one has control over that as a consequence of things big on YouTube, I think is limited, but that's not to limit people's capacity for building sort of sidecar information that can link to time codes and stuff like that as well. I'd be curious as to what kind of solutions already exist for that, but otherwise I'm pretty interested in playing with what kinds of additions and capabilities could be bolted on either by using it as an API or as writing bookmarklets. I've had a lot of success in the past with just writing things that take control of the JavaScript page on YouTube for my own purposes.
Alan enters just in time to be asked the same question.
Hey, all, what's up?
So we are going through into planning. And are you coming on video, or are you audio today?
Audio, I'm having internet troubles.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Right. So so I talked to Ward Cunningham yesterday, wiki guy, and he's very happy to join us. So we have a good amount of people. So we're considering every 2 weeks, because that means 12 people by June. I think we can do that. First of all, do you have a big comment on that?
I do. I think it's insane and ambitious, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I think maybe a way around that would be, what if we thought about this in seasons? So we do the 2 weeks, and then we say, okay, we're going to do this for there's going to be a 4-month crunch, and then we can assess for 2 months or 4 months, and then another season.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the discussion you just entered into was, I'd asked everybody how they want to consume this quote unquote journal. And by that, I meant, do you want to read it as in really refined, somebody does a transcript for $50 a piece, or just scraped YouTube text, which it doesn't even know who's talking, or audio or video? What should it actually be? And Adam's here. Alan is thinking about an answer, Adam, and we shall ask you in a moment. Oh, by the way, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Adam, while Alan is thinking, just to repeat the question so you can also think about it, this journal thing that we are now planning today, we're going to have at least one hosted meeting a month, maybe 2. But the thing that comes out of it, how would you like to consume it? As just video or as a transcript? And if it's a transcript, in what form, etc. So that's what Alan is going to tell us now, and then hopefully you.
Here's okay, let's take a step back, and rather than think about what we're trying to make, let's think about let's make assumptions about our audience. And
but Alan, before we do that, can we just talk about us as individuals? So your own personal preference.
All right, so my personal preference is that I'm pretty swamped, and I don't know that I think a consumable would wind up collecting on my wall, right? My bookshelf, in whatever form that, whatever metaphor you like for that. So a passive kind of resource that's always there, a Wikipedia of sorts, is, I don't know, or since I'm on the spot, I'm trying to think of what are the opposites of deliverables? What are the opposite of consumables? And on the flip side, you've got something that's super dynamic like Discord or Circle or Slack. And I am getting more and more allergic to those because that just adds to the info overwhelm, right? So that's kind of the angle that I'm trying to take it, is like, when I say take the audience into consideration, I mean me, but I don't want this to be like something that you put a bow on and give it away. But I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think the newsletter made sense in the kind of low key here if you want it. Yeah, that's all I got for the moment.
Just to add to that, before we go to Adam, when I met with Ward Cunningham yesterday, who really wants to come in and talk to us and all of that good stuff, he also hosts wiki meetings. And so the whole idea you mentioned recently, Alan, about kind of us reporting on other things, really, he really liked that idea, that communities reporting on other communities.
Oh, great.
To spread the communities. So
I have more thoughts on that as we get to it.
okay, so Adam, how do you want to consume the record of our interactions?
First, I don't like the word consume.
I don't eat it then.
That word makes me a bit allergic because it feels like something you eat or and it passes through you. But I want to, in a way, interact and dance with the ideas, really be immersed in them, and consume is the wrong metaphor for that. But same with the word content. I don't like the word content either. I want works and not content, because content it's a low bar to be content nowadays. So I rather not consume, dance with works. But to be realistic, when I watch talks or read books, a very low percentage is really meaningful or useful, but it's very useful, those parts. So I want to find the few ideas or sentences that you can keep and think more about in a talk, and sometimes it's not even in the talk, but in the discussion afterwards. Or between the lines, or your own interaction with the ideas, to make sense of it. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but most of the value comes from the interaction with the material, not just watching or reading a newsletter, but actually thinking about it and discussing it and taking it further. For example, for the future textbook, there are so many ideas that I feel are kernels or embryos for ideas or for discussion, that most of the value comes from actually discussing those ideas, not from just reading a formulation of the problem. We must also.
Excellent point.
So I don't know what that leads or what to, but that's my.
I think that's wonderful, Adam. I see Raphael has his hand up, but just really briefly, Raphael. So what we have automatically, we have this video stream, whatever direction we want. That is a thing that we have, right? So that's great. It exists. It's a channel. We're probably going to rename it. We'll talk about that today. But I think we're all saying here that this idea of a professor sitting down with a sweater, like I got this from Edgar, by the way, coolest sweater in the world, but sitting down with candlelight and reading through the pages of our discourse is just not going to happen. Nobody has time for that anymore. So what I think Alan and Adam really highlighted, and I think everybody agrees, we need, that's interesting. We need a way to have that thinking space. So we need to think beyond everything. I think that's really, really fantastic. Okay, Raphael, sorry.
Yeah, when Adam was talking, it reminded me of what David Lebel did for the Future of Text book, where he took every piece and, he kind of scrutinized it. So selecting, what.
We lost sound, Raphael. We lost sound.
Can you repeat? Still can't hear you.
You're still silent. Or...
I heard some static, Raphael, so maybe it's a microphone that actually.
Yeah, I think the battery on the microphone died. Can you hear me now? On
Yep.
another
Yes.
device. Okay. So hearing Adam speak reminded me of what David Lebel did for the Future of Text book, where he basically took the meta information of each of the texts and made it so it's visible. So if we have, a talk with Richard Selwerman, I want to know who he mentioned, any dates or any kind of technical words or any kind of specifics, because that way I can have an overview of the conversation without having to digest the complete conversation. If I find, the tags interesting, then I go in and then I do a deep dive and consume everything. But I would love to see the content, removed, the main pieces.
That's a comment on that, and unless there's somebody else speaking, that's a great point. In fact, like what that made me think is, hey, that was one thing I wanted to do for Future of Text as well. I would have had no idea that he was going to do that. Oh, I wish that I could have known that he was doing that, and maybe I could have helped him out, right? So that makes me think maybe there are some embryos, approaches that have cropped up in prior texts. Say, hey, this is a pattern that we like. Let's expand on this particular thing, like the sound bites, but maybe there's maybe there are other approaches as well that we could sort of say, this is a pattern. Who wants to be a part of this pattern? Who wants to help make this pattern happen? And then it's easier to think about and create.
Now we've gone really, really, really high level, which is really cool. But this meeting today, we have to nail down a few practicalities. And also, I just posted in the text chat here, zyotag.com for Esther Connection. They do some of this Zoom stuff, but I do think that it's kind of annoying that we're not all on the same platform, because the thing about the Zoom transcript, video, it doesn't somehow computationally say who is speaking when, because that would be really, really useful. We've gone through different levels of different software trying to extract it, but you have to teach it, and it just doesn't work, and all of that stuff. So, sorry, I just got a message that it was a bit interrupted. So I'm just thinking, okay, just this is me doing a detour against what I've said you shouldn't do, so I'll try to be quick. Imagine if we had an app on our computer. If it's a web app, fine, doesn't matter. But it has that key thing we talked about. You can press buttons to say when something is interesting or tag it live, right? And if that knows what the community is, then all of those are compiled into a PDF, HTML, virtual reality, it doesn't matter. It could be anything at that point. But that means that we're beginning to get close to this thing of our journal is, here's the video, that's the core truth, so to speak. And here is our list of the bits that we thought were interesting or not. And you can just click through. Brandel highlighted something. Peter thought something else was boring, whatever it might be. Isn't that a basic kind of thing we should attempt to somehow try to make for ourselves?
I'm getting the context more of the talk since I jumped in late. I'm starting to hone in a little bit more on what you're after. But somebody else going to say anything?
I think Mark has a hand up.
I just pick up the point that it's interesting that Freddie said, well, it's a shame we're not on the same platform. And I was just thinking back to, I think it was Alan was saying, I'm almost over, Discord and whatever the best word is. I'm the same, because basically they although they work at distance, it's about effectively being in the same room. And if you're not in the same room, it's not so useful. And also it's one more thing that the occasional user actually has a massive burden to use. And yet really what we're talking about is addressability. So the key thing here is the structure of what we do, not necessarily the means of consumption. Because I think the other thing that, you know, Alan unprompted said on arrival was, well, we need to think about actually how, in effect, other people use it. And I know in a way we're a useful proxy to start with, but it is also useful to say, just to think, how does somebody who has no immediate drive to use this, has no immediate requirement to use it, how would they used to get stuff from it? And the thing that I hear coming out from all angles is effectively structure for interaction. So if Adam just wants to dance through the data, that's cool. If the structure's there. So it might be more useful to think about it in terms of the structure and how the problem.
What do you mean by structure, Mark?
The data structure. So rather than thinking of it in terms of an idealized output, it's what are the things that we need to record, and how do we put them together in such a way that the consumer, the browsing device, medium, context, can get what the person needs out of it. I think that's an easier and deeper, and sort of more useful for the long-term way to address the question we're asking.
Oh, Alan, no. Turn the video back off. Sorry. Yes, no, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Alan, I see you have a hand up. That's in response to Mark, right?
Sorry.
Yes.
My hand, yeah.
I'll mute you if I can't see you.
Yeah, no. Let me grab my glasses anyway.
No,
Wait.
Just
Better
teasing.
still, I'll grab these glasses. I'm gonna make it real dark web. All right, I have the solution. Okay, so first off, highly likely that we're overthinking this, right? Because that's what we tend to do. And I think the key word is embryo, oddly enough. And what it reminds me of is, I know in Believer magazine, but a lot of times in older publications and Ephemeris, whatever, you'd have this nice front piece of a chapter, you know, and here's everything that's discussed in this chapter, right? Before you jump in. That's pretty much all that we need. Like, I think, hey, no one's going to go through and watch us talk, right? But if we say, here are the things that are discussed, and we kind of turn it into either a nice little narrative of like, this was brought here and that led to this, or there are links within that paragraph, you know, but I'm talking about like 2 or 3 paragraphs, because first off, that's easy to put together. We could even go back to previous ones and talk about that. Then we can link to whatever references, right? But we can't expect the audience to go through and do a deep dive. What's far more pleasurable is to say, what came out of this? Oh, these are interesting. I see the bounce back and forth. And now it feels like I read a simple little novel, and I can move on with my day.
Okay, so I have a question then. Because I don't like that at all. Because for 2 reasons. One, it would mean work outside of this time, and 2, either I'm going to have to do it, you're going to have to do it, or we have to pay someone. Because it's, you know, a little bit of thinky work. It's not just so. The other point is, I do love it, because if it could be made to happen, of course it's fantastic, but those 2 barriers are quite strong for me. But if we decide that, for instance, I've used a friend of Raphael's for some transcripts, and he's been very good, he's very reasonable, and he's clever. So he understands our field. And if we tell him to do his transcripts where he doesn't have to do interpretations, but, you know, all of this, hello, where are you? I'm wearing blah, 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 and all of that, don't write it down. But he can still write quite a verbose transcript, but leaving out a lot of that stuff. I would be okay to try to find funding for that. Let's say if we find a way to, you know, for the 1 hour, $50 or something, we should probably do that. But I think that if anybody in here in this group say we're going to try to do that, we may disagree on what was important once we start editorializing. And I think therefore the editorializing should be 1 level above. So that's why I really like the idea of not even necessarily an app, but something like we can all point, because Peter's been going on and on about high resolution addressing, because it is probably the most important thing.
See, I think that's more.
This is good, this is bad, this is good.
It's more work and it's less consistent. And so the thing about content or whatever, if it's not going to be consistent, you know, if it starts out a flurry and then it kind of drops off some, it's going to go off my radar. I'm no longer going to trust it, you know? So that's where patterns are useful. I think if you want to do the transcript, that's great. I think that's a lot of work, but someone can be paid to do that. Then a more abstracted layer, even just from the transcript, which, you know, I'm thinking of Gong, which is a software that I use a lot that is similar to Zoom, or it syncs in with Zoom, but it does an automatic transcript of everything that's spoken. It gives you a timetable of who is speaking when, and then it categorizes what each person's talking about. Right?
Why are we not using that software, Alan?
It's super expensive and it's designed for meetings with the clients.
Okay.
It's really cool though. I mean, they're really on top of it. If I was allowed to give you a tour, I totally would. Yeah, there you go. gongio.uk. So
the UK is probably just
point is
like
that-
yeah.
Yeah. The point is that while you have the transcript, what they've done is they've done tags, they've done auto tagging. Now, you know, of course, like Otter does that as well. What I'm talking about, I think, takes less work than the involvement of the thumbs up, thumbs down, right? And is less of a big deal. It could be the kind of thing that could easily be created by one of us or two of us, submitted to the group for edits, you know, and then agreed to a final form. And then that's just like the front piece. And if you want to go watch the video or read the full transcript, you can, right? But in the meantime, you get a nice, hey, here's the things that were discussed, you know, like, and I think that's, at least when that's done, we can put that episode to bed, you know. And if we want to go in and explore it further and you know, extract and intertwingle, we can.
Here's my thesis. It's 154,424 words, including appendix. And I wrote everything in one document. Mark told me he had one chapter per document, which I know people who write books do too. So that's completely legitimate, but I'm talking about it because of the interaction. So for instance, right here, I come across Hamilton. Oh no, Hamilton again, right? But I want to know where it's mentioned. So I do Command F and I can see all the mentions of Hamilton in my entire thesis. I think that kind of everything interaction is so crucial. You know, here is British. Boom, there won't be as many. And then I go back out of it. That's the kind of thing we need to aim for our record. That's, you know, even though I'm all about PDF as a save mechanism, how the heck are we going to be able to, every time Brendel talked about VR and Mark Anderson also did, how, you know, we need to get to a point where that's the kind of question that can be answered, right? So that's why it's yes, the whole idea of having some kind of a summary.
Well, then the obvious answer is visual meta, right? Like
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, first of all, really important question. What should we call this? When I save, and when I upload this today, I wanted to have a name we're going to love over the next year. What is this? Is it called Dancing with Text? Is it called Text Coffee House? Is it called something entirely different? What do you guys want it to be called?
My wife reminded me that discussion group, while not being an exceptionally sort of vivacious name, is accurate and reasonable for a number of other contexts as well. So to end up being recognizable, calling it a text discussion group is not unreasonable, but I'm also open to better ones.
If we go with that, not that, would it be discussion group or future text discussions or just text discussion?
The state of text.
No, we want the future though, no?
Future of text.
The state of Texas, the state of Texas. I actually really like future text discussions. What do you think, guys?
Like it.
Yes, I think it picks up exactly what Brenda was getting at, and put bluntly, it's not too pretentious, because there are so many things.
Damn,
You
we
know,
have to find something
no,
more.
but you know, we in an attempt to be appealing and sort of stand back the crowds. What also happens often, so you look back and think, God, did we really? Is that really what we thought was the best way to describe what we're doing? Which is something at one and the same time more humble, but much more interesting than the label we put on it.
Xana too.
Yeah, I like
Anyway.
generic descriptive. I think it works nicely, and people are, you don't have to explain. If we call it, for example, the library, well, what is the library? Well, the library is a meeting we go, every week, every 2 weeks, blah, 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 blah. So if it's descriptive, people get it fast and it's easy to share.
The first one was August 2020.
Wow.
I don't know why this is in there. That's a music thing. That's always been saved wrong. I'll try to find a way to get that off.
So
But
it's electronic remix.
You're channeling a bit of the orange is the new black there, I think.
yes.
The bottom right-hand corner.
So we tried a few, I put them by 1, 2, 3. I'll probably rename them by dates. Let's make myself a screenshot. But okay, future text discussions. And that's what I'll call the video. So that's step 1 we've agreed on, right? Yes.
What about discussions on the future of text? I mean, they are very small points, but like future text discussion sounds like it could possibly that the discussion might actually also refer to the future rather than simply to the text.
It's clearer. It's a lot clearer, yeah. Discussions on the future of text.
Tell me the other way you could interpret it again, please.
If future text discussions could mean that they are discussions of text in the future, or that it is somehow a future text.
How about future of text discussions? Because all the other stuff is the future of text.
Well, that still can mean that it's the future of text discussions could be still discussing it could be about the future of discussing text. So the discussions on the future of text is the least ambiguous formation.
Yeah, but that sounds clunky. What about if we put little quote marks around it like this?
Yes, that does the same job as inverting the place that discussions goes. I don't have a huge preference. I mean, I lean toward the one
Okay,
I have,
you
but
win.
I'm not. I'd be happy to put it to a vote. Honestly, because those things are qualitative. It could actually just be to do with whatever other pattern matching my mind is doing on it. So I'm happy to actually see that go.
Well, I'm equally happy to do it this way. So there. So we need in the wherever. Are we all happy with discussions on the future of text?
Yes.
This is kind of nice, by the way. 7 more, and we got 100.
Special
Actually,
episode.
8 because this one shouldn't be there.
Brendel's point is valid, and I agree. But I also think your point about the clunkiness is kind of important too, because there is a kind of a cognitive placeholder that this holds in people's minds, and it's easy for those things to get lost. So, like for instance, a lot of things get abbreviated and you just wind up saying FOT, right? Future text, right? So maybe there's a way to have both, but still have, like, the future of text discussions is nice because it shortens to FTD. But
I think that's a good point, Alan, because also with Ismail, I'll be doing these interviews. So we're going to call that the Future of Text interviews, the Future of Text Symposium, the Future of Text Volume 1, 2, 3. So if we lead with that, but as long as we have the quote marks, it's okay, right, Brandel? Okay, cool. Right. So back on this, a few more questions that are really practical. Should we invite Howard Rheingold, considering he wrote the book Tools for Thought?
I'd be happy to have him. I've really enjoyed his discussions with Andy Clark, and I read Tools for Thought recently, and I very much enjoyed it.
So
he's
I'll post a link to that.
His Clark talk, yeah, sure.
No, I mean, like, so I know the book, but what was the thing that you enjoyed recently?
discussions.
I
with
read,
Clark, you
I read his
said.
book recently. I found him actually because he was one of the few people who had interviewed and had a discussion with Andy Clark on Extended Mind many years ago.
Oh,
On YouTube.
okay. I know
So-
Steven Johnson mentioned him, and he's a favorite. Steven Johnson might be another one to reach out to, actually.
Okay. Well, let's go through this list briefly then, because we're a little bit over time. Right. So everybody agrees Howard Rheingold, yes, right? Anybody say no? No. Yes. We're going to invite him. Yes, invite. I'll do that. Ward Cunningham and Richard Solworman we're happy with. Who else from this list should we invite? I'm going to try Anne Laure again. Oops. Anybody here want to invite somebody specific?
Yeah, I'll try to contact Alberto Mango.
Do you have a link to this? Can you add his name as well?
Could you send it on chat, please?
I can try.
Oh, who added Andrew Hinton? I know him.
I have.
Yeah.
Oh, that was you,
I'm
Brenda, wasn't it?
I'm actually sort of friends with him. I can reach out to him.
Okay.
Great book. Did I add that?
Not sure. So Alan Kay is out of commission for a while. He's recovering from something. Okay, good. So that means that we have quite a few people. As in, once we invite these with the ones we have here, we should be able to do 12 by June or one per month by December. So then we need to go back to this discussion of how we're going to record this. I honestly think that we agree. I hate that expression. I apologize. I try to be honest with you all the time. There will be snippets of stuff sent back and forth, and they should be able to go back to whence they came from, right? And also other dimensions. So we'll agree on that, but we need to decide on this very first call has to go into this in some rudimentary form. Right, I need to step away just for 1 second, but let's just think of this very first call, how we're going to store it and disseminate it. 1 second.
He means not just publishing it on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, right now, YouTube has I'm not familiar with whether there are more artifacts that are recoverable from the Zoom. Having never recorded something on Zoom myself, maybe I should try that sometime to see what one gets out of it.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that people need to go to paid solutions for the who's speaking aspect of it, because just thinking about what is actually available to the Zoom platform, that's trivially recoverable. The thing that I did with being able to record the screen of a computer and put it on another computer was actually in support of being able to recover that data, which I'm confident I should be able to have done in half a day, which I'm going to try today. But
The bigger ask is sorry, go ahead.
But with that in combination with the transcript that YouTube provides, I think that we have some pretty useful artifacts, not necessarily the ones that are sort of user serviceable, but it's a good start.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing is the editing out the noise, right? Like I keep coming back to the degrees of compression, meaningful compression, because no one has time to go through all of this. And maybe that's a longer process where we keep nursing it the way we do this Google sheet, you know. Maybe it doesn't have to happen all at once, but that compression is the, I mean, if you're talking about something that you want to last for a long time, it's that, you know. We remember the phrases of Socrates than the entire transcripts.
Yeah, and also it might take us half an hour to get to the bottom of something to which there is then an answer, which is the extractable fact. Now, if in 100 years' time some doctoral student wants to sit through hours of our conversation, they'll still be there. But you're absolutely right. Many of the people would probably imagine consuming this, want a better word, with apologies to Adam. Haven't got the time. And if they had the time, they'd probably be here in person, and they're not. So the real value add is actually, as well as the long-term repository, which we can't assume anyone will necessarily read in its raw form, is actually the sort of the extracted skein of understandings that we come to and cross-references, be they to tools, be they to other groups, or effectively new understandings that we think we've established.
Right. So it's quite clear that nobody is going to be listening to this conversation unless they are an historian in 1,000 years. So this is an example of interesting for us because it's framing the community and stuff, but completely boring for everyone else, right? And that's not a bad thing. That, you know, it helps our conversation. So the thing about, okay, let's imagine we can build a database. Let's think a little bit old-fashioned. Let's imagine that in this database goes the video, and the chat transcript was just hugely important because links and things go in there. And the normal transcript. Then, you know, if we have such a thing, if we just decide on that, how we output it, we can output in several different ways, right? But the dimension. So the dimensions we need, time we have, we also need identification of speakers. It's so important. And software right now, unless you train it and spend a lot of time, isn't good enough. So should we just try to find a way to make a web app that does the thing we talked about, records all our own perspectives first? It lets us click a button, this is interesting. It lets us add highlights and stuff and just put that into some server somewhere, and then we export it as PDF and HTML and all kinds of good stuff. Should we just figure out a way to do that? Because we don't actually have a playing space where we should put our data yet. All we talked about is
okay, yes.
And that's
so let's figure out a way to do that. And I think maybe what's going on here is actually we're talking about the need for man hours. What we need is a post-production team, right? Because none of this stuff magically happens, right? And AI can't it can make it easier, augmented, you know, but it's going to be wrong in some ways. So we need to talk about the value of where to focus on a post-production team, the urgency of that, you know, how does that happen right after the video comes out? You know, I don't personally think so, but I think the video could come out and then it could go through stages of compression and post-production. But can I mention a slight, Peter, before you go, can I mention a slight twist of topic, which is this? I'm going to go ahead and do it. Great job on Digital Planet. And you froze. Or no, you just weren't moving. Okay. And it reminded me that our purpose here is, one, navel-gazing, kitchen, fun times with friends, but it's also kind of saying, hey, there's this future that everybody talks about that includes climate change and equality and all that sort of stuff. And what we're trying to do is inch into that picture of the future, the general idea of the future that the public has, this place for text, right? and to think about text in this new way. And it doesn't have to be a specific solution. Visual meta is one of those parts of it, and it's a very good part. But mainly we want to wedge in our Jungian unconscious of what the future is to include this kind of idea for text. And so we can get future thinkers. Cory Doctorow is another one I just dropped on there that I think would be fantastic, who are generally interested in the future, but we're saying, let's fit the text into that and change the narrative slightly, right? I think that is closer to our full purpose and why we're here.
I think that's fair enough. If you want to invite Cory, that would be great. I'm going to give the mic to Peter now, but can we all agree that whoever we feel from this list we want to invite, we will try to do it today so we have responses by Friday. Is that cool, everyone who wants to invite someone? Lots of nodding. Okay, Peter.
Yes, in the side chat, I posted the text of a newsletter posting by Federico Tomasetti, and he's starting to move into looking at natural language processing, and he prepared a guide to all the resources he found. So that link's in the side chat. Also, it occurs to me that the Zoom app itself knows exactly who's talking when, since it's opening the microphone and writing the text. So maybe what we should do is ask the Zoom team if they could provide a feature to simply dump out a data file listing timestamps and which person's mic is open at a given time.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
Gong
they
totally
have all
does
the
that.
data in the app.
Yeah. It's in the metadata.
Is it? Where? I just had a look.
I mean, it's gotta be in the channel metadata. Hell, Twilio video does that as well. I didn't
It
even.
may not be exposed. It may not be exposed to the user or not with any ease at the moment. But I can't.
It is with Twilio.
No, sorry, no. I mean, it's in Zoom. No, I take your point.
Yeah, no, but I know it's got to be. I'm assuming it's in the metadata because Gong doesn't make guesses about who's speaking when. It has a track of the members that have joined the group, and it has them all listed down. And whenever they speak, even if they go, it pops up as a blip.
It may well be that Zoom's left that as a sort of aftermarket product.
But let's put it a different way. Let's say that we decide here now our normal calls will not be anything other than video recorded. That's it. We'll keep doing what we're doing for those. The ones that we have a guest host, we'll spend a bit of money having a transcription. We'll figure out a way to how to finance that. If we do that, what format should the text be? We can have several formats. So I guess if we get it as Microsoft Word, which is a neutral thing, we can just copy stuff out of. Let's think this, it's going to be a human doing it. Most likely it'll be Danilo, who has been very good for us. Thank you, Rafael. He can deliver it in many different ways. How does Adam want it? And how does Brandel want it? How do we want it? We who may do stuff with it before we give it to the world. What could be easy for a human to give us the thing we want?
Well, as long as, to take your point, if it was a Word document, as long as the Word document is capable of, either through whatever Word document editor you have or some other process, for instance, producing the type of structured data that Brandel and Annabeth talking about using, then it's fine. So I turn it round into the constraint. What does the Word or whatever format top sort of start level document need to address from the get-go? So in other words, you don't want to spend hours making a document and then find you've got to go back and tag it with some kind of headings or something, because those
Mark,
we did actually know we needed.
Mark, what would headings be? We're talking about having a human who is not right now in this group. He may join, that would be lovely. There are some really good people on our periphery. But basically, okay, he could tag us by person. That's what he's done already. He did the Future of Text day 1 and day 2, our annual symposium. But if he does that, so let's take Brandel, you as a case study person. This person will probably get a Mac. He's currently using Windows. He's writing it in Word now. But what would benefit you so that you have to do almost no work and it's useful for you? I guess one of the things would be at some point in the video, he'll have to have YouTube links with time marker, not every single person speaking, but something, right? What else, what do you want?
I want a mix of what Adam made, right? Something close to the two interfaces that you design, Adam made, and Adam designed, mix between that and Reader.
What about for your world, Brandel?
I'm used to scraping and processing. So from the perspective of being able to generate novel and interesting views, the things that I would make, are what would be useful as the speaker. I do hope that it would be pretty easy to recover that quickly. I grabbed a small sample of today's discussion in order to try to build something that will be able to kind of recover that for subsequent sessions like this. But yeah, nothing jumps out at me at this point that I'm aware of, other than to make because the YouTube transcript is actually excellent. It's just that the real estate that's devoted to it is abysmal. So having some kind of more humane representation of that text that tells you more about what it means would be very useful. So one of the things that I would be interested in doing is, for example, taking the time codes and maybe looking if there are any discontinuities in that, such that you can identify that this piece of text being after that person suggests that it's a different speaker, or just that it's a change in topic, because a lot of the time changes in topic will be the somewhat larger gaps within the conversation. So yeah, I'm mostly thinking about it in that sort of data representational sense, and without having a particular application, I'm not aware of the things that I need to be able to build that, but I'm going to start playing with it.
Okay, I see Peter and Alan have their hands up, but just really quickly, do you have a way, Brandel, where you can extract the YouTube transcripts?
Oh yeah, no, that's easy. I built a thing that generates a Wordle, a bookmarklet that I built. I'll find the tweet, and it was fun. So yeah, it's just a matter of finding the HTML element that contains it, and then effectively doing a copy paste of it. So you can do that with your
so let me
hands, but you can also do it with in code.
But okay, so before just to finish with you, Brandel, could you help put together a thing that gives a transcriber human an easy way to add that stuff, as in to add our names, for instance? He doesn't have to type everything, but he can just click with these other people, because that would reduce his workload and our money load.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that would be pretty straightforward. You might need to register individual speakers, and then once you have those as a pool of people, then you just be able to click for the discontinuities, scroll through and see where different people come in and say, okay, from here on out, it's Raphael. From here on out, it's Adam. Yeah. That kind of thing. And so those things are manifestly possible.
Okay, let's keep talking about that, but I've been a bit of a bully. Peter?
Yeah, I suggested JSON is a possible metadata format. Fields can be a time index, speaker, topic, responding to, and the timestamp from the thing that you're responding to. That would suggest that the user interface for the user should have a button that he'd click when he hears something that he plans to respond to. So that's sort of like a queue for response button. You click the queue for response button, and that would let his app know that the next statement he makes should be linked back to the timestamp when he first hit that button. Then when he hits the button, it would send the data through. I saw that there were a couple projects in the NPM ecosystem that were looking at replicating the functionality of Zoom and Discord using open source Electron-based tools. So the libraries to do all of the work in creating a custom client are already out there. It's just a matter of our figuring out which library is best and walking through one of the tutorials on, here's how to replicate behavior of Zoom using NPM. And there are a whole bunch of them out there. So it is doable. And again, if it's set up so that each person is clicking those buttons as they go, we don't have to have the grad student being paid. The data will already be there. What we want is to be generating the data on the fly. The other thing is that we want to have some sort of a discourse representation structure to describe the overall conversation. So there are already ontologies in place for people in the linguistic community that did that. And there are also a couple of tools I saw a long time back. One of the O'Reilly books talked about them. I have to go poking through my library to try to find where that was. But they had some tools for marking up transcripts after the fact. And those were geared more to grad students who are going through a transcription and meeting notes from interviews to inject tags and appropriate notation. So we might be able to find some existing tooling that we can leverage in that regard. So that's what comes to mind at the moment.
Okay. Right. Okay. There's a lot of stuff in there, but it's about how to get it into that format. So I think definitely those who can should keep looking into that. Alan, I'm sure you have something, related.
Well, this is not my product manager hat. This is the opposite. But what we're talking about, certainly in the format of metadata, reminded me of something that I still think would be possible and wonderful, and that would be, and this might be the great test bed for it, and I'd be happy to put in the work to help make it. Essentially, it should be possible with the right kind of markdown to say, here's the metadata form, here's the transcript form. Hit another button, I see it as a blog. Hit another button, I see it as a slideshow. Where you hit another button, I see the video with timestamps. And so it's all the same data, but I'm easily given these different views. Hit another button, I see it as a text conversation that I can view on my phone, right? That's not for the here and now, but maybe we could make steps towards that. And I think it would be pretty fascinating. Also, what we're talking about here, as it gets more wild, going back to the idea of rolling in the other brother sister kind of groups, future of work, future of programming, speculative future, whatever. If we make something like this, or have a kind of workable experimental pattern, we have a real possibility for maybe Patreon or raising money with these other groups. They use a similar pattern, or they do some version of it, and then all of them are consumable in a similar way.
No question, this could be an amazing product. Absolutely agree with you. Mark, I see your hand up, but just briefly, guys, I clicked on Brandel's link to the Wordle generator, which just makes me sick with excitement of what it could be. So this meeting that we have today, I don't mind paying for a transcript. I think it's really a very good investment, but I think we need to know exactly why and how. There's a few things we've decided today. We decided on the name of this community. So that is the kind of thing that will be cited by someone, probably. 80-90% of today has been waffle in the sense of someone in the future. It's been important waffle for us, but it's been waffle. It's not going to be cited. So Adam, are you also, sorry, Mark, I'm just a few specific things. Are you also thinking about putting this into a system that you use? Do you have requirements for how this should be output?
Not really. Personally, I just want a few markers to the video conversation and I would be very happy. Because I've downloaded most of the future text videos and made a few simple pages with a few timestamps and comments, either quotes from you or just small marks where I with things I want to re-listen to and think about again. And that covers about most of my use case for this. And in terms of using the valuable time we have here on planet Earth, I would rather work with active reading or maybe text in 3D and embodied richer input forms for text, because I feel much more limited with the keyboard, for example. And so if I want, but this feels like I'm a party. Do you say party pooper?
No, I don't think you are at all a party pooper. I think one of the things that has come up is that most of what we talk about is really boring. It's exciting at the time, but it's really boring for any to go back. Let's just accept that. But then there are the really interesting bits that people will have value, primarily us and other people. So the kind of simple use case you're talking about, I think covers almost everything. I think that if we had a way that we can easily, live would be great, but then later on go back and click on things to say, this is something I'm interested in, or even to have the text chat log integrated into the transcripts, and to have this in a, I mean, imagine if we had a web page for this, basic login. So everybody here within the community could easily go in and add a little tag or add a little timestamp, whatever you want. So we have a human who is in charge of doing the basics of putting it in there. Then Adam, your system could have it, Brandel could have it. I could easily put it into Author, export a monthly or whatever I want, PDF, as in whatever we want, but I would do that or whatever. We just need a place to put it. So I think that's really cool. Okay, Mark, I've been rude to you for way too long, except you have yellow and yellow hands, so that's my excuse.
No, don't worry. I mean, if it makes Adam feel any better, I'm going to suggest something else that might seem party pooping. But I think another thing to not overlook is whether what we're doing actually is useful in the general sense of scholarship and knowledge building. So another way of actually maybe getting some input into this is if we look at it and see, are we doing something quite apart from the general interest angle that is a useful model, or just useful data for somebody, even if they go to it and say, right, here are hours and hours of how not to do it. And even that's useful. I mean, having just been through the doctoral process, actually often more illuminating than the things that work are the things that didn't work, especially if there's some discourse around them.
But let's
so I just open it. I suppose the point in Reductio is just being open to the point of whether what we're doing is useful to people who are long-term librarians, government archives, repositories and things like that. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, I don't have a fully formed idea. It's more just being open to the point that we may find we're doing something, and it might just be useful to pull that in, because often people, I think another thing that I found the academic community is really bad about doing is actually just get involved in things that are happening.
Yes.
They want far too much up front. They either want it to all be fully finished, so it's all there already and there's no risk for them, or somehow it has to be new and sexy and fun. And I think that's ridiculous. This is just one of many things happening that people could benefit from.
Adam, over to you. But guys, we really have to decide on Friday when we meet again. There will be a record of this meeting. We have to decide now what it should be and what's useful for us. If it's entirely wrong, come Friday. Fantastic. We've done a test. Adam.
I just wonder if in 3 or 5 years the tools for meetings, I suspect they will have video meetings or video chats or Zoom meetings. I suspect they will have improved a bit in 3 to 5 years, because there is intense competition between the major players here, and so I think there will be major improvements. While in text in 3D, I don't think there will be too much interest, because there are lots more. Yeah, it's so focused around games and other things. So I think it's there is a bigger void in for example, text input or text in 3D. So if we want to do something unique for the world, I think it would be more useful to work with the 3 dimensions, for example.
Yeah, the thing is, we know each other well enough now in this group for me to be pushy. Let me just be honest. This has to be the beginning of a record, and I think, Adam, that is completely correct. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask for this chat today to be transcribed into a Word document, and or should it be in a Google Doc? What is actually easiest, or what is most useful for us right now? Well, I mean, the transcription, I'll ask for it to have inserted the chat text as well as it can. Names should be listed. That in itself is pretty useful, right? But how do we make this an ever-growing corpus? Should we just Google Docs the next year and keep extracting and keep it growing?
Well,
Everybody else can have read
that,
access. Sorry.
Well, the Google Doc, as I understand it, has no understanding of an endpoint. So it is an endless doc. So in some sense, say compared to a Word doc, it might be better, and you could say there's more resilience built into it until Alphabet goes under, or some new cataclysm we haven't seen happen.
But just to clarify, is this to actually extract value, or is it an experiment to provide some pointers for other groups or the future? I don't really get if it's...
The value is based on being able to navigate dimensionally. My favorite example of that is basically select text and do Command F and see all the occurrences. You know, at some point I should be able to say, I want to see everything Adam has said, but not when this other thing happened or whatever. You know, that kind of interactions is what we want to build, because some of the stuff in here is truly amazing. You know, right now, I have to say, our VR discussions have gone in really interesting territories. I think that is an example right now that is really worthwhile a student or anybody to listen to. And, you know, we go into all kinds of different directions. So it is about, okay, let's put it this way. We're having coffee with a friend. We hear someone at the other table talking about something interesting. We say, oh, we're doing so-and-so. You really should catch up on what we do in the community. What is the entryway? I think this is what Alan's been pushing on. What is the entryway they should have? Some of it will be editorialized. We release a book once a year. That's got an introduction and articles. So that's one thing. But to be able to refer to when Raphael said this and Peter brought up this really interesting thing, that has to be the interaction. And today has to be the test case. Yeah, Peter.
Yes, I also like to see us maybe have once in a blue moon, maybe once a month, just a dedicated session to the future of text tooling, just to talk about development tools and to get those of us that are building systems to see if we can move towards getting some kind of a test bed platform that we could all be contributing code to and leveraging what we're working on individually so that we start looking at technology integration. Because if I have a really great tool for doing a chat script visualization and Brendel has a way to do a 3D visualization off of that, we want to get to a point where we can start exchanging code between one another and building larger aggregate systems.
You got what, Alan? Oh, Web3.
Come on, you guys.
Oh, God.
Okay, so we're talking about two different ends of the spectrum. The way that we've been talking about it is, what is the ideal, format for traversing this? And then the other side is, hey, we need to have something by Friday, right? So these are actually two totally different streams.
Mm-hmm.
The thing on Friday, Google Doc, maybe. If we rely on an app, we get more out of the box, but it's less timeless. So like my default is HTML, just freaking let's put it on IPFS or something. Just have a have the HTML format for starters, you know. If we want to add a compact, here's what it's about, you know, and then build out from there, you know.
Okay, so we have agreed that I'm going to ask for this to be transcribed into a Google Doc. We will all have editing access. Anyone else can go in and view it. And I hope it'll be ready by Friday. He's quite busy now, but there we go. And then we will all play with it in our own sandboxes. And if we have other requirements or needs, we will discuss that over time, right? So let me put it this way. On New Year's Eve, we went to see Emily's two best friends who are godmothers for Edgar. One has 2 kids, the other one has 3 kids. So there was 6 kids altogether. We had a nice dinner, super nice day, but there was one giant elephant in the room. It was the warmest New Year's Eve on record in the UK. I am tired of just talking. I think we have to act like gun crazy Republicans and storm the hill. And the only way we can storm the hill is if we have a target. So this is our first target. We managed to give ourselves a brand, which is useful. We've given ourselves a beginning thing. GitHub. Yeah, GitHub is interesting. That's a bit beyond my everyday technical expertise, but I'm sure you guys could teach us all how to use it. But should we just?
Yeah, we could just do pull requests and extract gists and link as we need, and it could even show. There's even a Google Doc format that we could use. But go ahead. I mean, a Git doc.
Okay, why don't we? No, that's a very good interjection there. I'll get in touch with our transcription dude, Danilo, who will be watching this, and try to invite him maybe for next Friday or Monday, and you will give us all those who need it. I'm sure Brandel and Adam don't need it, but a bit of an introduction to how that should be used. Would that be useful, Brandel and Adam? It would be easier for you to use stuff if it's in that environment, maybe.
In a Google Doc?
No, GitHub.
No.
I avoid using Git as much as possible, but mostly because I despise command line tools. I use a GUI for everything else.
Okay.
No, it doesn't have an impact for me. If I can get data, it doesn't. I'm a very chaotic person in terms of data sources, as I'm not particularly concerned if it's a Google Doc or if it's the stuff. I mean, by virtue of this going up on YouTube, it will be transcribed to the extent that YouTube does it, and that's a really interesting starting point. I have a screen grab that I've taken of today's proceedings, such that I can try to do that that process of ascertaining who's speaking when, such that we might be able to kind of interlace that with other things. So no particular representation matters very much for me. More the provision of specific data is the important part.
This is exciting because right now a thing happened. There was a proposal and there was a point against it. So this is something that may want to be listened to in the future, right? So in the way that we have to learn to speak to Siri or Cortana or whatever, it takes a bit of literacy to remember to do that and to say things. Maybe we should think about there being another person in the room now with us who can't interact with us, but so that we learn to say things like, that was interesting. Or we even give this person a name, right? So we say, we can't do that. Hey, Jane, because I won't say Siri, right? Hey, Jane, what Brandel replied to Alan was really interesting. And there we have a tag, right? Can we develop a language for that? Should we have a virtual character?
I like it.
And of course, we will have to call the character Doug, right? For Doug Engelbart.
That works for me. What were you going to say, Raphael? Sorry.
No, I'm saying that I love having somebody in the room that will slowly optimize how we have conversations and discussions in a way that is useful to be transcribed or to be recorded for the future. So if somebody's here, then they can ask, okay, you just mentioned the word hypertext, and then could you quickly define it? And then that is a snippet of information to be used, in the transcription. So it's not a full text transcription like we've been doing. It's more, getting bits and pieces and constructing it as we go. It kind of breaks the speed of conversation and the flow of conversation, but it seems to be better to document it rather than just having a raw data file of mumbo jumbo that has to be sorted later.
You're talking about having basically a human chairperson.
Yes, in the beginning, there will be more input from us into the text, into the document that this person will create, but eventually the corpus of conversation will be structured enough that it's going to flow a lot easier. So it's a little harder in the beginning, but it gets easier and easier as we go.
But by the way, I'm sharing screen now to show that I'm thinking of calling it Doug discussion, and the reason Doug is all uppercase because it's kind of an acronym as well. Dialogue for Online Understanding. That's not new, but what I'm saying is, we don't have an actual person, which Raphael, I think would be a good idea, but should we just try to figure out a way to speak to the camera sometimes, so to speak? And see if that becomes useful or becomes entirely strained. I don't know.
I like it.
Okay, cool.
I think interesting experiment to do. I mean, in the sense, and it may prove to be all wrong, but we won't know till we try it, which is the very reason to try it.
Don't developers have the rubber ducky method of developing, where you talk to the rubber duck to figure out the issues with the code?
Adam just pinned something. How did you do that? Adam, what did you do? Was that on your screen or was that?
Yeah, but there is if you do reactions and press hamburger or more options, you can put any emoji up there. So you could have a secret, and perhaps you could do keyboard shortcuts in a way for some of them to have markers. The problem is that Zoom removes them from the recording, I think. So what I've done in the past when I did some graffiti at some point, when I added text to my window, was that I had to run it through a graphic or a OBS studio and add a web page on top of myself.
Brilliant.
A transparent web page. And
wow.
So that's a way to add more information on the screen, either text or symbols or markers.
Literal exploding head.
I know. Yeah. This is an evolution of the language right here. I mean, this could really become, if we had a regular way to just visually. I mean, it's these days pretty trivial to say, look for the head exploding, and then tag it purple.
Let's get somebody that writes in Pitman shorthand, and then we can just tell people, look for the squiggle. And then, they can quickly find what they need.
Well, so interestingly, with that issue, so Brandel, on the Mac, we have good live speech to text, but I'm not sure about how those libraries are accessible, because I'm thinking maybe even if just one of us, like maybe me as the host, has a basic app running, tries to do what everyone's saying, but the key is that if I choose to do those little insert things, it's done that they can then later on, when you have the YouTube transcription, it can know where to insert them. So whoever has a little thing like that, we have enough text to find those points. Does that make sense? Would that be useful?
Yeah. If you have some kind of reconcilable time coding system, then it should be possible to put all of those bits and pieces together. Absolutely.
The reconcilable timecode system is amazing because that is part of the Zoom video. It's in the lower right-hand corner, which is such a gold mine for this, I think.
Gosh, that is brilliant. I see the future, the immediate future of Zoom chats being filled up with these coded emojis so that they can be extracted later on for particular meaning. Like that's a platform innovation. I love it.
Oh, I promise not to do any more investment in coding this year, but well, for a few months, but maybe this. I mean, it's insane. You know how I love the tap back thing on messages, right? We're basically desperately like little animals trying to claw at the door. I want to do a tap back on video. All right, it's such a basic thing. Please, the APIs of the universe, let us build it.
Follow the white rabbit.
I mean,
I'm gonna have to take off.
There may be an argument for Twilio video here, honestly, because it's far more open what you can do.
Sorry, I just want to say, see you later, Rafael. You'll be here on Friday, right?
Yes, I'll be here on Friday. Now
Okay,
my
cool.
schedule is back to normal.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, Rafael.
Twilio video, Alan, tell us more. I got to go in a few minutes too, but I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, it's just you know, the same way that we handle SMS and all of the other tools, except that we make them developer friendly first. So the APIs are open and completely you know, hackable, right? You just have to have the idea, and it's very easy to spin up an instance of Twilio video. It's not going to have, it doesn't come with its own interface, but that's the limiting factor and also the opportunity. You can make your own Zoom and invite people, etc. And they're I think it's pretty much almost feature matched with Zoom at this point, you know, like blurry background stuff. But then you can do way more on tracking the channels.
I was just thinking our unique selling point could be blurry foregrounds.
Love it. Love it.
Sorry, Mark, what do you want to say?
It's just a quick interjection that follows on from something that Alan said earlier about, you know, there's the production end and the sort of the tool and the content. And I just flag up another thing that I'm conscious there's another thing we've been flitting beyond, which is, in a sense, the manner of delivery versus sort of what goes in the grind at the other end. And I think the first is more tractable at the moment. It's naturally it's the kind of thing we like to do. We like to think, oh, what's the really nice sort of sexy outcome we're going to produce? It's going to make everyone want to watch this, and that's because that feels like the thing to do. But probably the more useful and long-term good thing we can do actually is, you know, follow on the things we've just discussed and go through a couple of cycles of probably quite painful things that didn't quite work. To move from the state of, yeah, well, we ought to have it on these channels, to, yes, practically today you can sort of do this, and we can posit that these other things can follow in, not many today, but, you know, we can certainly predict that'll go along. How it quite looks at the end, I'm less sure. So I know some people want it handed on a plate with a pretty bow and nice fonts and everything, but I think a lot of people who are involved will actually come for the real meat of the thing, because that's the exploitable and useful part.
Alan, can you tell us more, just to go on that hardcore thing? What would it involve to make Twilio video?
Well, I mean, we could spin it up. I could spin up something, and if I could join Friday, I could probably have something to show on Friday. It would have no interface, so I need to think about what's the bottom line needed. I didn't suggest it earlier because I think it's overkill on the development side for what we're talking about. But if we can get the transcription with emojis added, let me look into that. Otherwise, Zoom does the job, you know?
Yeah, that, and to be able to have the text chat in the transcript.
You can have that.
So that's very, very exciting. And it's a bigger question, but now that I'm a resident of the Oculus Verse, where would we, and I'm asking everybody, where would one or two of us sitting with a headset in a chat like this fit in? Until we have face tracking, it would just be kind of stupid. We wouldn't really have an environment, right? Or is that not correct? I mean,
we already have Peter that is a photo, so it's not less dynamic than that. But so if he was an avatar that didn't really face track, but was there and moved around a bit, maybe that could.
We all going to build an avatar by the end of the week.
well, I mean, the thing is, this is obviously a longer term question, but it's relevant because we don't look at each other in detail all the time, but the ambient, are you paying attention and are you excited, is useful, right? And it's social. You know, this whole metaverse, I am walking over here kind of stuff is currently a bit ridiculous, but clearly we are, you know, something is brewing. So if we want to take this record into that world where at some point there's a richer representation, because we would all like to be in a space now rather than in a box, right? Or at least to try it.
So in terms of people being able to be co-present, the least worst option that I'm aware of at this point is VR chat. We can play around in there. I'm not aware of ways in which people who aren't in virtual reality can participate with people who are. I think that some of the video sharing, some of the video chat platforms have started to talk about the way in which VR-based participants can participate, but the thing is that view has to be completely synthetic. So yeah, I don't think that there's anything good yet for being able to manage multiple people. I guess high fidelity might actually do it.
Because for all my joking about Alan's camera being on, off, and then coming on and saying, "Oh, I don't want to look at you," I would much rather look at a real Alan in low pixels like we have now, rather than a sharp high-res cartoon version.
Right, and yeah, and the other aspect of it, which is why VR, for the time being, gives you different, but in many ways worse signals from the perspective of conversation, is that the emotion that we have in our faces is much more important than whether we have 6 degrees of freedom tracking of our heads, which you get in the video chat anyway. Exactly. And so people being VR participants until such time as we have reasonable face tracking as part of it. Oculus has announced that they have intention to put some trackers in and onto the face. We're in kind of a bind with regard to being able to capture the emotional performance of a participant within virtual reality. So yeah, like I like more immersion, and VR is one way to do that for some things, but for co-present social interaction, it's actually worse at this point.
Okay, fantastic. I look forward to Friday. Alan and has got homework. I've got some homework. If Brandel and Peter, if you just happen to have any inspirations of how this might fit your own workflow, Adam, you too, please feel free to note it down. It is important to me that these meetings are pleasant. So I don't think we should expect anybody to do anything ever outside of the meetings, you know, other than the ones who really passionately want to. That's why I'm a bit wary of the kind of actual normal work side outside. But if you, well, you won't be here on Friday, Peter. Okay, Monday will be good. Okay, I have to rush downstairs. Anything else in closing?
Yeah, this is my library. I stole 500 book images from Tools for Thought Thinker because they had a very nice homepage. I just scraped the book covers. So these are 500 different books because I looked behind me and counted about 500 books in the bookshelf behind me. Wanted to see what that would be in if you if you put yourself inside your library, you can pick any book. Now it's repeated, but it's just 100 books repeated. But if you stood inside the circle of all your books and just pointed at a book and got it, because you can show the PDF in the browser.
Oh my God!
So it was just after Brandel talked about 3JS. I just wanted to try it out. So I wanted to see the library. It's not my selection. So if you find crazy Atlas Shrugged books here, then it's not mine.
But imagine this for topics. Imagine this for your world of interest, like what actually is going around your brain when we have a conversation, and you can see it float behind you as you're honing in on, this is about Doug Engelbart, this is about Xanadu. Anyway.
Yeah, I tried with the kind of doing comic bubbles over my head in one meeting, doing graffiti on my own head, writing thoughts. Instead of doing it in the chat, because the chat is a bit disconnected from the picture. So I would love to see the text coming inside our frames here a bit. It could be distracting, of course, but I think we could find a good way of doing it discreetly.
I gotta go. I gotta close it down. But Adam, you're going to start working in VR soon. You're going to get yourself an Oculus.
I looked at, but you still need.
I'm so sorry if that sounded like a question. It was not a question at all.
I looked at the price. I looked at the availability, but it is an issue of actually registering a Facebook account, because so I have to.
They dropped that requirement.
Is that true? Is it true in practice?
I'll take a look at the transcript to see whether it's the case. I did reset my Oculus recently. I think that they have dropped the requirement of it. You need to have an Oculus account, but it's not a Facebook account.
Oh, okay, great.
I believe.
Okay.
So I'll take a look, and I may be wrong, but that was my understanding from the last.
If that's true, then I get the Oculus
I understand the concern about a Facebook account. I've always seen Facebook as being completely public. Anything I put there, even though it says for friends, something I'm completely happy with having public. But of course, if we put our knowledge work into it, it becomes something different. So
yeah, but it's not only that; it's also what you're supporting in the world, in kind of
but at the same
addiction services. So it's a political statement. To me, it's just as important as a climate crisis, because it can fuel the climate crisis by doing. I don't want to get into that too much now, but it's much more than being private and exposed. It's many things.
Adam, we cannot live in the metaverse. We cannot have Zuckerberg own our virtual future. There's no question about that. Even though it's an expensive device, I look at it as a disposable. It's something to learn what it feels like. I completely abhor much of what's going on there, but we all have to make our own decisions, as in what guns we're prepared to pick up, so to speak, even though there's blood on it.
Great chat, everyone.
Look forward to Friday, guys. Please remember the invitations. If there's someone you want and it's on the list, just invite.
One last thought. I saw that there's some project on Kickstarter trying to do a VR headset with a Linux platform. So we'll have to see how that pans out. And of course, we're waiting for Apple to come out with its offering, which will hopefully be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, but by the time Apple comes out, we need to be literate in how it feels to be in VR. I think that's a really key thing, because a lot of it is, if it's theoretical, you got to go into the forest to understand the trees. Okay, love you guys, and look forward to Friday and Monday. Bye.